Hi, and thank you for joining me and ultimately us for the State of Leadership Simple and Beyond. Robert is having some technical difficulties, but we needed to get this party started. So I am here. I will introduce him when he gets here. I am Whitnie Wiley, and we are here every Thursday, 3 p.m. Eastern, 12 p.m. Pacific, talking about all things leadership. Again, the name of the program is The State of Leadership, Simple and Beyond. And today we're going to be talking about words. Words matter and why they matter. And I'm also going to share with you a couple of articles that I wrote on this matter for the Lioness magazine. I will put those links. It was a 3-part article, actually. I'll put the links for each of those 3 parts in the post for you. So this is something that I get all the time, challenges that I have with my clients. It is something that had been an issue for me at earlier points in my life. It's not so much an issue now because of my awareness and an understanding about the importance of words and why they matter, right? So everything starts with a thought. We have thoughts, and ultimately, thoughts become reality. If you focus on those thoughts long enough, they become reality. Now, fleeting thoughts are one thing, but we're talking about the things that you focus on. And as you focus on them, it may become the things that you ultimately say and the behaviors, the things that you do, right? The behaviors that you take, the habits that you form. And what we want to stop are those habits that are not serving you. And so it goes back to changing the words that you're speaking to yourself, speaking to other people. And so here's Robert. So let's get him in. Hopefully his tech challenges have been, you can hear me.
Yes, I can.
Awesome.
I'm back.
He's back. That's Robert. For those of you who were here at the beginning, when Robert wasn't, that's Robert. Robert Hilliard, he is an executive coach and my business partner in the Simple Leadership Method. So I was just explaining why words matter. Ultimately, they become our behaviors and they become our reality. The things that we think and speak ultimately become our reality. And what you say about yourself and to yourself makes a difference in how you feel about yourself. And it's the same with those that you lead. If you say empowering and uplifting words to those that you lead, they will believe that, right? If you're saying it and they are acting in concert with that, as opposed to you saying derogatory things or always putting them down, saying things that make them feel bad. And if you think back, if you've ever had a boss who was constantly writing you, chiding you, never had anything positive to say, you start second guessing, right? Whether or not you're doing something the right way, whether or not you're as smart as you think you are. And so that's why it matters. And so I want you to think about it like this. If all you heard all day was that you were lazy, clumsy, and worthless, what would make you think that you could actually be productive, agile, and feeling like $1 million? Probably
Yeah.
not going to happen, right?
Yeah.
Not gonna happen because it reinforces the environment that you're in. And that's what we're talking about. So whether it's about you or whether it's about someone else, we're talking about the environment that you're creating. So paying attention to what you're saying becomes vitally important. You have some opening thoughts here.
Yeah, sorry, I apologize for missing that. I had a technician come in a couple of days ago. to work because I was having issues. So I had a tech come in here, and apparently we didn't set everything back up the way it was before. So I apologize for that. Well, let's talk about that. This really starts when we're little. And I don't know if you're familiar who Peggy O'Mara is, and she's really, big into the parenting and parenting magazines and stuff like that. And she has a quote, and it's, the way we talk to our children become their inner voice. And so it starts when we're little, and we get that programming. And I'm a firm believer, in how I was trained as a coach and as especially a leadership coach, is our words come from our thoughts. And our thoughts impact our feelings, and our feelings impact our actions, and that gives us the results that we get. And it works when we talk to other people, because it's the same mechanism. We all have that same cognitive ability. Most of us do, and that's how we process information. And I think later on we'll talk about some techniques you can use and some pitfalls and things like that.
Right. So the thing that to remember is, and we've talked about this, I believe, on the program before, is our brain, right? And its job, what it seeks to do. I'm not a neuroplastician or neuroplastic scientist or whatever, right? I'm not that. And so I'm not going to even pretend to profess to understand all the little nuances of how it works. But our brain is looking to protect us, and it is seeking to make life simpler for us. So that's why we get habits. When you're doing the same thing over and over again, your brain sort of gets to a point. It's like, oh, I've done this before. We can do it like this. And you start doing something the same way over and over again, whether it's driving to the office, the way you get up in the morning, how you start your morning. If the first thing you do is run off to make coffee, right? You start doing things in a particular way. It makes your life easier. Your brain is trying to do that. But that doesn't always mean that's the best way, one. And two, your brain doesn't know the difference between what's really serving you and what isn't serving you. And so when you go back to, as Robert said, that the words that were spoken to you as a child that become part of your programming, the words that were repeated by friends, peers, people in school, your teachers, counselors, others, employers, whatever, right? That these things that are said start to become the things that you say to yourself. And if you're saying things to yourself that are not true, your brain will start to work to make them true. Right? Because it can't handle, and Robert is the brain of this operation. He remembers all the references from everything he's ever read. And so I shouldn't have gone on a tangent, because now I lost the word that I was thinking of. Cognitive dissonance, right? Yes. So your brain, it can't tell the difference between the two. Between the positive words you're speaking and the negative words you're speaking, right? That inner voice, that inner critic that's going on. And so when you've got conflict going on, you're wondering why you're stuck, right? You're wondering why things are not working out for you, because there's a mismatch happening, and it's creating an inner conflict, basically. So what we want to do is to start to recognize that we've got this negative voice, how it is not serving us, this inner critic, negative voice, negative self-talk, however you want to phrase it. Recognize that you have it. If you have it, most of us do, even those of us who are aware and working towards a better outcome, it still creeps in every now and then. Right? But awareness is our best friend in this, and recognizing that it happens, sort of the situations and circumstances under which it pops up, the things that trigger it, right? When you can be aware of it, then you can address it. If you're not aware, you'll have a difficult time addressing it.
Yeah, awareness is key. And we always talk about that. That's a reoccurring theme on the show. And a lot of times when people talk about words or being, what's the word I'm trying to use? Self-actualize or, self-efficacy, they start talking about positive self-talk. And positive self-talk can be really helpful. It can help you be more effective. It can help you have more confidence. It can help you be more productive. But I think some of the issues that people have is when and we talk about cognitive dissonance, is when they have a word or a phrase they use that's so negative that they can't think of anything positive to say. So for example, I'll use this one as a really easy example. I have a friend that says, I'm terrible at math. and because she says she's terrible at math, it's the self-fulfilling prophecy.
Exactly.
Right? There's no effort to be better at math. And one day, after hearing this I've known her for 20 years, I said, well, why not say I could be better at math? Right. So that's instead of saying, some people will try to like a self-affirmation, and they'll say something
and try to go 180 degrees
right.
Instead of right. And that cognitive dissonance, like, no, you're not.
Yeah, right.
No,
so yeah, and I use this with my clients. I'll say, if you're struggling with that, I can't say, and I don't deal with a lot of people that have weight issues. They don't come to me for that. But in the past, I have talked to people, friends that had these issues. And I hate my body. Instead of saying I hate my body, they can't go from I hate my body to I love my body. Well, how about I have a body that works for me? So move it in a more positive or even neutral direction. Is a lot more effective than trying to go the opposite way of it and having that cognitive dissonance where you don't believe what you're saying, and so therefore it's not helpful at all.
You say that, it reminds me of a concept from Tony Robbins called 2 millimeter shift. I'm sure it has other names in other places. Is you don't have to go from 0 to 60 or from 0 to 180. Right? You don't have to go the whole way. You just need to start making a shift just a little bit. And the more you do that, eventually you get where you want to go. So you do have a place where you're trying to go. And in your example, loving your body, maybe that's where you're going, right? Right now you're at, I hate my body. You're trying to go to, I love my body. You can't get there in one fell swoop. So making some incremental steps, finding the things that you do like about your body, if it's like one feature or one thing or what it can do, right? Being grateful for the things that it can do. You got up this morning, you open your eye, whatever it is, and find the incremental steps. Sort of putting this in some steps that I'd had laid out. We started with being aware, right? Having some awareness around your patterns and the habits that you have about what you're saying to yourself and to others, why you're saying it, right? And then challenge the veracity is the place that I like to start, is to challenge the veracity of what you're saying. So you recognize that you're saying things, ask questions about it. So in your other example about hating math or not being good at math, right? I love math, grew up loving math, was really good at math, am really good at math. All the way up until I got to Berkeley. That's another story for another time. But that wasn't really math. That was a whole other, something going on. But I have always loved math. So when people, and I tutored my way through college. And so the people that I was working with, the tutees would come in and they would say things like, I hate math. And I was like, do you like money? Right. And so starting to take it and equate it to something that they could actually relate to. And it's like, well, when you're dealing with money, that's all math. right? It's all math. So challenge the veracity. Do you really hate math, or are you being challenged by some concepts in math right now? It's like there's a people saying, you know, I had a really bad day. Did you have a bad day, or did you have a bad 5 minutes? Right? And so challenge the veracity of the statements that you're making, particularly the ones that you're repeating over and over. And I don't have the statistics right in front of me at the moment. Robert probably will, you know, bring them up, but I think it's like 90 something percent of the thoughts that we think are repeated every day, right? We think the same thoughts basically every day, like 90, 95%, whatever the number is really high. And then of those, like 86% of our thoughts are negative thoughts. And if you do the math, which I did because I like math, it turns out to be something like 76% of our thoughts are repeated negative thoughts.
It's amazing.
Right?
Yeah.
And so we can control that by recognizing that it's happening and then challenging those thoughts. So now that you know that most of your thoughts are the same, the thoughts you have today are the same thoughts you had yesterday, or the same thoughts that you had last week, 2 weeks ago, a year ago. Do you want to change that? Are those thoughts serving you? Because those thoughts become your words, right? Your words become your actions, your reactions become your reality. Your actions, your behaviors, your habits, your reality.
Yeah, you're steering this. This is funny because I think we talked about this on another program. We don't rehearse this. We just pick a topic and then we just go with it. And you just
serendipity.
It is. We work so well together. You just segued right into the next section, and that was the pitfalls. And the pitfalls are, you know, and these are things that I talk about, and I'm sure you talk about with your clients as well. The first one I always try to point out is the amygdala hijack. You know, when you're feeling, and this is funny because when I first started thinking about this, I was like, when you have those negative emotions, like, no, words are important. Those emotions are not negative. They're just emotions.
They're just emotions.
When you have fear or when you have anger, they hit the amygdala, you get flooded with cortisol and adrenaline, and you literally cannot think because it's time for action and you have your fight or flight. So when I work with clients that, you know, they may have this thing when people say things that trigger them, they get agitated and they have a hard time choosing their words wisely. One of the things that I say is notice where it is in your body. Notice where it is in your body. Because then that's the clue that it's time to force your executive function to, you know, back into the pilot seat. And so most of the things that we think are going to happen when we enter that fight or flight area usually are not a possibility. We just think it is. And my friend and coach, you know, Monica Coleman always says, it doesn't matter if a tiger is really chasing you. If your brain thinks a tiger is chasing you, a tiger's chasing you. So it becomes, you feel the same way. So be mindful of how you feel. The second thing is, and you hit on this earlier, having ineffective mental models. Mental models are the shortcuts that we take day in and day out that really direct the actions that we take. And for the most part, they work. 95% of the time they work, but there are those instances where they don't. And so you need to look at when your mental model, and I'll give you a mental model. For example, if you're going on a date for the first time, you have mental models as to how you should dress, how you should act, what you should buy, that should you go with a gift. Those are all mental models. Or if you have a friend that just bought a house and they're inviting you over for the first time, you should bring a gift. You know, you want to arrive on time. You know, maybe you ask if you need to take off your shoes. These are all mental models that you've created. And a lot of times they work. Those are the shortcuts that make life easy. But when they're not working for you, it's time to, again, get your executive function, you know, think logically about the situation and choose a different path. So those are things that can really alter the words that you use in a particular situation.
Yeah.
The last pitfall is just being unconscious, and they all tie in. It's just being on
Yeah.
autopilot, not thinking about what you're doing, what you're saying, and just rolling along and not paying attention to clues or cues from other people that are letting you know that you should probably use different words when you're having a conversation with them.
That's such a good point. Let's say that you are in the midst of a performance evaluation or a one-on-one, a weekly one-on-one, and some words come out of your mouth, and you notice a change in demeanor of the person that you're talking to.
Mhm.
Right? So the best case scenario would be that you noticed the change in demeanor, right? And not being mindful, not being present, not staying in the moment would have you continue down a path, not recognizing that until it became either untenable and it goes beyond just a change in demeanor. Now they're tuning you out. Now they're not listening to you. And if that becomes a habit, then you've got someone who's disengaged and probably looking for work elsewhere at some point, right? So or in your relationships that somebody's looking for a way out. So you have to be mindful, and I think that's a really important point on the end of the really good points that you were making. Being present, being mindful. Is extremely important so that you can recognize if you start down a path of using words that aren't serving the situation, that you can make a course correction.
Yeah, that's the key. Making course corrections it's the key. I think that we had an episode about ego. Some people don't. I'm not making a course correction, right? I'm not going to admit that I'm wrong or I chose the wrong or inappropriate word for that situation. But you need to be able to do that. Just like the person that is shutting down when they hear something they don't like in that performance appraisal, that evaluation, their mental model is that, well, when I hear something I don't like, I just tune it out because it's going to make me feel bad. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just how they handle it. And you may have some people who have a different mental model who will say, okay, you said some things that I don't agree with. I'm going to stick up for myself and I'm going to say something about it. So you have to be in tune with what's going on.
And then there you are thinking they're being defensive and they're now attacking you, right? So you've got this mental model battle going back.
It's going back and forth. And it's all based on how, your consciousness, right? You're like, well, you're not paying attention to what's happening. And now you're in a situation and that, goes into conflict. And we can talk about that. We should probably have an episode on how to deal with conflict because those things happen. And, and it creates, we have conflict inside ourselves. And now we've created it with the person that we're having a conversation with because of the words that we choose.
And I want to say that brought up a thought that I have and something that I'm constantly reminding myself of as maybe a pattern interrupter. I don't go around. I have gone to Tony Robbins a couple of times. He has a thing where he has you stick your finger in your nose, right? As a pattern interrupter. I don't need to go quite that far. But I do find myself saying a lot. Nothing has any meaning other than that which I give it, right? And so an example, you and I meet every Sunday morning or most Sunday mornings. We have a scheduled standing appointment every Sunday morning at 7 a.m. Pacific, 10 o'clock Eastern. And I had this thought, and I'm going to make myself the bad guy in this scenario. You don't show up one Sunday morning because you've got a family, something's happened for whatever reason. You don't have an opportunity to shoot me a text and let me know, right? I show up, you're not there. And I immediately go, that Robert, he always he doesn't come when he's supposed to. He's never on time. He's always not showing up. He's unreliable. He's this, that, and the other thing. And I've had it. I can't work with this Robert dude anymore, right? That's me putting a narrative on a situation that in and of itself is a neutral situation. Robert did not log in for our meeting. That's all that happened. Any meeting that has, I have placed on it, right? It could just as well be that you were out partying last night and you overslept, didn't set your alarm clock, right? It could be that
I wish.
It could be that something happened with you or your family and you didn't have an opportunity to send a text because something is going on, right? So I have the choice, and ultimately this comes down to choice. While you may not have a choice for the initial thought that comes into your head, you absolutely have the choice to focus on that thought, to continue to dwell on that thought, to ruminate over it, and then to give it meaning and the meaning that you give it. So it becomes important that when we recognize that this is happening, that we've challenged the veracity of the statement, right? That we can look for things like affirmations or mantras or, other ways to stop, to reframe the situation, one, and then replace those thoughts, the thoughts and then the words that come out, to replace them with something else. And I'm just saying, one of the things I have chosen so that it stops me in my track from spiraling down, because the negative bias can take you from 0 to 60 down a path, right? So that next thing you know, you're in an argument with someone when there's no need to have an argument, because you're both operating off of mental models that have nothing, one, to do with what's going on, right? So I'm reminding myself nothing has any meaning other than that which I give it. And then I can take a step back and apply the steps that are a part of this.
That's fantastic. And one of the things that I jotted down when you were going over that was that you may have inadvertently created some confirmation bias. So now you created this narrative that I never show up on time, and now everything I do is suspect, right?
Exactly.
Exactly. Confirmation bias, and we
do that a lot in dating.
Dating. We do. The funny thing is, the brain is very efficient and it works hard all the time. And so any shortcut it can take, it will take. So confirmation, I've had people tell me things about myself. I'm like, I never thought that. I never thought that way about you. Yes, you did. Or you did this because I'm like, no, most of the time, if I'm not, you know me well, I'm focused on coaching, basketball, I'm focused on, reading, what book I'm going to get next, when I'm going to work out, these are the, I'm not looking, I just usually don't spend my time trying to do things to annoy people. Now, in doing those things, I may inadvertently annoy somebody. That's the conversation. But some people, listen, and it's their right to do it. They have, they create shortcuts, and confirmation bias is one of those shortcuts. Dating, great example. When you like somebody, that's another great example, because you can look at somebody and say, you like that person, you have these amorous feelings toward that person, and all of a sudden everything they do means they like you back.
Right.
And it's not necessarily the case.
And then those exact same behaviors 3 years later proves how much they can't stand you, right?
Yeah, exactly. So it's how we think. And of course, the words, I like to say thoughts come before the words, of course, but sometimes they just happen so fast because in the back of our brain is running its program in the background, and we're not being conscious about it. So we really need to be very conscious about how we are interacting, the words that we're saying, and the actions that we're taking, because they're all moving based on the programming.
Exactly. And so, this reframing or re-evaluating situations and taking the time. And it can happen in an instant, right? But it can't happen if you're not aware that it's a problem for you or that it's not serving you. And so, looking at and giving things a new perspective. Just step away from the situation and look at it with a new perspective. And just remember that it doesn't mean anything other than what you think it means or that you decide it means. And in having good communication means actually having a conversation with someone and asking them about what's going on, right? Or if you notice somebody's change in demeanor, or when you notice, not if, but when you notice, at the point at which you notice, being willing to find out what made that happen.
Yeah.
And then not being defensive about it in return.
And we say this, it can be really hard to do if you're not making it a habit of being aware. It's, we talk about, this is like anything else in this social science space. You talk about it, it seems easy. Be aware, be conscious, right? But you have to make an effort to actually do that. You have to make it part of your daily practice, or you won't be able to have success. Really, and I think that, and when we talk about this, what keeps coming up for me is having those difficult conversations with people, an opportunity when you really need to or should measure your words when the stakes are high. And I remember I was a lifetime ago, I used to do a lot of conflict mediation for people. And there was a situation where the subordinate, who was a director, and their manager were not seeing eye to eye about a situation. And I was sitting down with the person's boss, the manager, and I was like, okay, let's talk about this. How are you going to approach this? And the person started mapping out this very strict, I'm going to tell that person. And I was like, okay, well, what is the result that you want to achieve? Well, I want that person to start being more, mindful of their actions and when they're at the job. And I want to have a better relationship with the person. I said, well, how are saying those things going to help you have a better relationship with this person? And then they're like, oh, well, what do you suggest? I said, oh, let's talk about what's the purpose of this meeting. Well, the purpose of this meeting is really to bring some things to their attention. And so, right, it's not to write the person up. That's not what you're here to do. You're here to talk to this person so you can have a better relationship, so you can give directives to this person so they can carry them out. Talk to this person, they get in the meeting, the first thing they said is like, well, I was thinking about giving you a warning. And the person just went like this. And the conversation was over within the first 30 seconds. And then afterward, of course, I debriefed with that person. It's like, well, how successful was that? They were like, it wasn't very successful. I was like, why? Well, I should have listened to I should have carried out what we did. Well, why didn't you? And they got so nervous. It was the amygdala hijack. They got so nervous. And instead of, looking at me and going, I'm really nervous. Can you start us off? They just went to, I don't want to abdicate my leadership to the consultant. I'm just going to say, what's on my mind. And it just was not a very good meeting. But like I said, it's a lot easier said than done. So you have to practice it and be really aware. Fortunately for that person, we were able to debrief and talk about how they could go back and have a redo. But sometimes you don't get the opportunity to have a redo.
Right. A couple of things you said, really important to have a vision, have a goal about what it is you're doing, what it is you're trying to accomplish, so that you can have a plan that can help you get there. And I would have suggested a lot of people don't necessarily like this approach, but I make notes when I'm going to be in a situation. I want to make sure that I cover the things that I want to cover in the way that I want to cover them and not get hijacked, right? Is to make notes that remind me this is what you're trying to achieve. Here are the points and the way you can make it in a way that doesn't, it at least hopefully send somebody into a place of retreat where they are feeling put upon and defensive, quite frankly, right? So think about what it is you want to say ahead of time and make notes so that you can stay on track. And then the other thing is being intentional. Going back to the point you made just a little bit ago, is that in the beginning, this change, and then maybe forever, it's going to require you to be intentional about what your goals are and how you're going to pursue them. I will say that one of the challenges that a recurring theme, I guess is the way to put it, that I see with my clients is that there's a desire that once you've addressed something, that's sort of the end of it. And unfortunately, it doesn't usually work that way, right? It would be nice if it were one and done, but it's something usually that you've been doing whatever you've been doing the way you've been doing it for some period of time. And let's just say, best case scenario, it took you a 1-to-1 correspondence, 1-to-1 ratio of time to undo what you've been doing. I would say that would be a good, an excellent outcome. It's probably
2-to-1.
2-to-1, if not 3-to-1, right?
Yeah.
So if you've been in the habit of doing something some particular way for 10 years, it's probably going to take you 20 years, right, of intentional. And the good news is that the time in between the incidences will get longer, right? And so you'll feel like, oh, I've got this under control, and then something will come along and trigger, knock you off your feet, and you go, I thought I dealt with this. And yes, you have, but that doesn't mean it won't come back in some fashion. And so just understanding that on the front end, right? Recognizing that is going to happen. And when I can get my clients to understand that, so that they don't then start thinking, oh, I'm a failure. I'm not good at, I can't do this, or this is too, or whatever it is. It's like, no, it's process. It's process. And you're being aware, mindful, intentional, and recognizing that it's going to take concerted effort over and over again until it starts to space itself out, until the frequency starts to decrease, or the duration of whatever the incident is, or the intensity of it all starts to change. You're going to continue to have to put in effort to do what it is you're doing.
Absolutely. When I haven't for a while, but a lot of times, you remember I used to do a lot of workshops, and most of the times I would start out with ground rules, but nearly every single time I would tell people, you're going to forget 77% of what you learned today within 6 days. Most of what you experienced today is going to be gone. And one of the things that happen a lot when people learn something, especially when they're learning something that their peer, it happens. I just read this in Harvard Business Review, how our level of confidence often overshoots our ability. So we are overconfident about things, a great, more than we have a lot more confidence than we should. And it's very interesting because you look at the statistics, and there's many statistics here. Men are generally, more overconfident than women are, right? That's just the fact. I mean, they've done research, but everybody's confidence overshoots their level. So it's really important when you're working on some of these concepts or all of these concepts to have a way to get good, accurate feedback. It's whether it's practicing and recording yourself, practicing with a partner that's working on the same thing that you are, just asking someone that you work with, hey, telling them, I've been working on this for a while. Have you seen any changes? What changes have you? You have to be brave enough to do that, or we all fall into this trap. The overconfidence will start to creep in, and you'll think you're better at something than you actually are. And we've all been there. So it's really good to get really accurate feedback that can help you make adjustments and really make that true incremental march to excellence or mastery. Because we'll tend to think that, oh, I went to 2 seminars, I'm an expert. You're not an expert yet. You got to keep working at it.
Exactly. And the fact that, you go a couple of days, you hear us here, you pay attention. It's like, oh, I got this negative inner critic, and you address it. And for a few days, you don't say anything negative to yourself. You don't say anything negative to anyone else. You're probably, I don't want to say not ever, right? Because I don't want to speak that into your reality, but just recognize that that's probably not going to be the last time you have a negative thought that you're going to have to address. And you're better prepared, recognizing that it will show up probably at the least opportune time, and just accept that that's what it is, and then pick up and move on. Okay.
Absolutely.
So final thoughts.
I wanted to prepare some final thoughts because sometimes I don't have them prepared. And I'm going to leave with a quote by Lao Tzu, right?
Okay.
So I think it's appropriate. Watch your thoughts, for they become your words. Watch your words, for they become your actions. Watch your actions, for they become your habits. Watch your habits, for they become your character. Watch your character, for it becomes your destiny. I think that's really what we're talking about today.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I had 2 things that came to me. One is this whole thing around words. When we were kids, our parents gave us this, I'm assuming it's parents, I don't know, kids on the playground, whatever. Someone said something bad to you, and your response would be sticks and stones, right? Sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. And the reality is, words hurt. They cut. You have the power to lift people up, to empower them. You have the power of dragging them down. And so just recognize, and the someone is someone else, and the someone is yourself, right? So take the time to think about what it is you want to say. And even if it's in an instant, is this what I want to say? Am I choosing the right words to say what I want to say? And are the words that I'm choosing getting me where I want to go, getting me the outcome that I want, right? So you need to know what it is you want. You need to pick the right words to say, and then you want to make sure that those are the words that will actually get you where you're trying to go. And just recognize that words do have the power of life or death. They have started wars. They have broken up relationships. They have ended up with people being fired or leaving jobs, right? In the heat of a moment. So just pay attention, recognize that words matter, pay attention of what you're saying, and then choose wisely. Recognize also that your words come from your thoughts. Your thoughts come from the things that you expose yourself to, right? The media that you expose yourself to, the people that you surround yourself with. And so if you find yourself saying things and ultimately doing things that you don't believe are serving you, pay attention to what you're ingesting so that what you're projecting is more in alignment with what it is you want out of your vision. So with that, we want to thank you for joining us on this episode of The State of Leadership, Simple and Beyond. We are here on Thursdays, 3 p.m. Eastern, 12 noon Pacific. And until next time, take care.
Bye now.